Dr. Brian Langloss.
Here.
Mr. Carl Newman.
Here.
Mr. Drew Helm.
Here.
Our newly graduated Miss Jillian Lee Riley.
Present.
Miss Rachel Ephart.
Here.
All right. Mr. Johnson.
I'm here.
And Mr. Snars.
I'm here, Mr. Chair.
I'm just messing. It's the last meeting. Miss Washington said she will be here a little late, but she will be here. Okay. All right.
Mr. Chair, quick point of
yes.
order, just to let everyone know that we're connected to YouTube, so we're just streaming to YouTube. Just want to let all the members know. Just let them know.
All righty. And good morning, good evening to everybody at YouTube world. My name is LeVon Barnes. I'm the chair of the Citizens Advisory Committee, and this is our May meeting. And at this time, I'll go on action item number 2, which is to approve the minutes from March and April. Hopefully everybody's had an opportunity to look over those minutes. And in turn, if you haven't seen any errors or if there's any amendments that you would like to make, do so now. If not, I'll take a motion to accept those minutes.
Mr. Chair, I move acceptance of the March and April meeting minutes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. It's been moved by Miss Alicia Smith Freshwater. Can I get a second?
Ashley, I second.
Okay. Second by Ashley Robbins. Okay. Any discussion? Okay. No discussion. All those in favor of approving March and April's meetings, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, those minutes have been adopted into the record. I guess, Mr. Johnson, did you want to speak a little bit before I introduce our guest?
No, I don't have any comments right now other than welcome to everyone. I'm sure the chair will share with you that based upon the exec committee's discussion, this will be the last meeting until for the summer. Normally we have a meeting in June, but mainly that's to close out the year and eat and to have a little celebration and thank you for your service. But of course, we won't be doing that in the midst of COVID. And so we'll transact the season's business today.
Yes, I'm sure that some are disappointed right now by hearing that news, but I'm sure that you will get over it quickly. However, I am very excited about introducing my co-chair of the Affordable Housing Implementation Committee, Ms. Tiffany Elder. I wanted to bring Ms. Elder in here to talk to us because I think a lot of what the Affordable Housing Implementation Committee does and what we do really is coexists, is parallel to each other. And in our last committee meeting, Ms. Elder presented this PowerPoint that she's going to present today that raised a lot of eyebrows. And honestly, I know that after looking at this PowerPoint and those who may be watching at home, you're going to come away, I'm going to say just upset with the way that our housing market is going and our real estate market is going and what the trend is looking like. So I'm not even going to waste any more time. Ms. Elder, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Thank you all for having me.
Awesome. I give it to you. You are now on the floor.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to share a PowerPoint with you. Let me get that up and running. Am I able to share on here? Hang on.
Yeah, Ms. Elder, I believe you should be able to.
And I didn't want to cut you off. I'm sorry. I had a quick question for you.
Yes.
Would you like to entertain questions during or hold?
Maybe if I can run through and then we can, have a conversation or have any questions immediately following, that might make
Okay.
sense.
That'll work. So committee members, if you have questions along the way, write them in the chat and then we'll cue those questions.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, here it goes. Hang on. Sorry about that. Here we go. Can everyone see this? Okay, perfect. My name's Tiffany Elder. I'm co-chair of the Affordable Housing Bond Implementation Committee. I'm also a realtor and licensed general contractor based here in Durham, and have been in real estate since 2003 here. So I will start off by saying we are witnessing a type of market that we've never had here before. And the purpose of this presentation was initially me digging in and trying to understand what was going on in the market, because we were seeing crazy offers and so much increased demand, and I was trying to understand why. So in here, we're going to talk about some of the forces that are at play. These are 5 of the main forces that we see are driving the high pricing and increases in our market. First being low interest rates, increased construction costs, lack of inventory supply, influx of new residents, and the fact that new residents are bringing much higher income, which we will cover in more detail. So we're going to walk through these one by one. To start, these are the annualized historic mortgage interest rates over the last few decades, all the way back to 1972. As you can see, they've been dropping precipitously, and as of January of this year, that was the average rate for mortgages. It's a good thing for home buyers who want to buy a home because it makes home ownership more affordable. Ideally makes even owning rental property more affordable, so that that benefit can be passed on to a tenant in a perfect world. But it also increases demand for housing, and this is one of the factors that's playing into the increased demand that we're seeing in our market, is because mortgage rates are really low now. The second is increased construction costs. So I pulled this snippet of an article from NAHB, the National Association of Home Builders. Record high lumber prices, they reported about 6 or so months ago, we're adding just the lumber price, we're adding $24,000 to the price of a new home. So building a home was more expensive, and that $24,000 was just due to lumber. That was not due to any of the other factors that go into building a home. I just saw an update on this article last week come out from NAHB, and in maybe just over 6 months, that number has increased now to 36,000. So record high lumber prices, because lumber has been climbing continually. A typical home in the US costs 36,000 more now to build than it did approximately a year ago, just based off the lumber price increasing. To give you an example, a little over a year ago, a 4x8 sheet of plywood you could get for about $8 or $9. About 2 weeks ago, there was one vendor where it was priced at $52. So lumber prices in some cases have quadrupled or better, but we're seeing high increases in lumber. So we are going to spend a little bit of time on this slide because I want to make sure this is probably the most important factor. One of the most important factors is lack of inventory. So these numbers come from our local Triangle Multiple Listing Service, MLS. And these stats are as of the end of January 2021. You'll notice median home sales and average home sale prices are at the highest that we've ever seen in our city. This is for Durham City. Median price $294,500, average sales price just under $338,000 for the price of a home in our city, which based on the average income per capita in our city, which I believe was just over 60,000, it's sort of driving up the cost of our housing cost has been driven up, and it's becoming a little more difficult to afford the average home in our area for someone who's on an average income. One thing to pay attention to is the difference between the median sales price and the average sales price. There's a pretty notable gap. So, average is, of course, take all the sales, total them, divide by the number of sales. Median being line up all the sales, $1,000, 100,000, 101, $1 million, pluck the one out the middle, and that sales, whatever that sales price is, that's our median. Anytime you see an average so high above the median, it's because so many homes are selling above that median sales price that it's pulled the average up. So not only are these numbers significant, but the fact that this is so much higher lets you know that there are a lot of homes selling on the high end of pricing in our area. Of course, days on market are down, et cetera. But two things that I want to make note of: at the end of January, we had 0.7 months of inventory. In and of itself, that probably doesn't say much. But if I were to tell you that an average, healthy, balanced market has 6 months of inventory, that puts this 0.7 months or 3 weeks into a different perspective. What that means is 0.7 months, 3 weeks of inventory. If no homes were to go on the market beginning today, and we could only sell the homes that were already on the market, in 3 weeks, we would be completely out of inventory based on the pace of absorption in our sales in our area. Typically, again, there's 6 months of inventory sitting there, so there's plenty to choose from. This lets you know that we don't even have enough inventory on the market. There's nothing to choose from. Inventory levels. In the entire city of Durham, at the end of July, there were only 341 homes on the market. To put this into perspective, there are approximately 1,100 realtors who belong to the Durham Association of Realtors. There are about 12,000 realtors who belong to Durham, Wake, and Orange County altogether. And most of those realtors are working with more than one buyer. And all of those buyers who are looking at Durham only have 341 homes to choose from. We're seeing levels of competition in bidding and pricing and concessions that we've never seen in this market, and it's because of that. So again, lack of inventory is very challenging right now. So I want you to remember the median price of $294, the average price of $337 at the end of January. So $294 and $337. Now at the end of April, $294 is $319, $337 is $359. The new median and average pricing. Our market is accelerating. 0.7 months of inventory has now turned into 0.6 months of inventory, approximately 2.5 weeks of inventory. If I were to rewind to this time last year, beginning of last year, there was 1.7 months of inventory on the market this time last year. And that's still very low, but it's been dropping every month. And now we're almost at a half month of inventory, which is essentially no homes to sell. Days on the market, 12 days, we're seeing homes come and go, leave the market, same day they hit the market. And, just to reiterate, all of these price increases make it that much harder for a landlord to buy a property that he wants to rent out and make it available for rent at a reasonable rate that is amenable to folks who are at, median incomes in our city. So these rising sales prices affect not only homeowners, but they affect tenants as well, as far as affordability. So another factor are these recent employment headlines. So just take a look at some of these. All of these are Durham based except for the last one, the most recent one. 878 jobs, biotech, all of these were pulled from Triangle Business Journal, FYI. Biotech, 878 jobs, average income, 96.5. Clorox, 158 jobs, 120,000. Another company, 119. Manufacturers bringing in new jobs. Google's coming downtown to Durham. And of course, we've all heard about Apple coming and bringing about approximately 3,000 plus jobs at an average salary of $187,000. So again, if we look at our median per capita income in the city, which is just over 60, as I believe, just over 60, unless it's changed recently and I'm not aware, compared to these prices and these incomes, some of which hopefully will go to folks in our area, but a lot of these are going to be folks relocating to our area already in these positions. These people who are making thousands more a month than our median income are going to be able to compete more fiercely for both rental and ownership opportunities in our area. So again, I've been giving you a lot of stats on the housing market and the sales side, but the rental market is feeling a very distinct pinch as well. We'll chat about that in just a minute. So the takeaways: Durham market's moving swiftly due to multiple factors. If you own something, understand the value of what you own. If you want to own, put something in place so that you can become owners and sort of have a stake in the community while the numbers still allow for you to do so, because pricing is accelerating at a much quicker clip than wages are. And the rental market has extremely high competition. Renters have to remain aware of the potential for steep rental increases. I've gotten multiple calls on lease renewals that are $350, $400 more to renew a lease from the prior year for tenants in place. I have a colleague who was put in a difficult situation. He's selling a property in East Durham for his client. And while that client is not planning to put the tenant out, the price that the buyer is going to buy that property for, they are probably going to put the tenant out. And the gentleman's been living there for 20 years. He pays $450 a month. He's older, disabled, on fixed income. And we've been scrambling to try to find somewhere to help him move to. So any resources that are available, please let me know, because these are situations that myself and my colleagues see quite often. And it's really challenging because individuals are being displaced on a daily basis. Yeah, and to secure long-term viability, I always just want to press the point that it's important for members within the community to own residential and commercial spaces. We are getting a lot of eyes and activity from out-of-state buyers, a lot. I know myself and my colleagues have worked with folks who are moving here from another area because their jobs are now permanently virtual, so they can bring their higher income, and move here or wherever else they'd like to. And that's who locals are competing with for housing and for rentals. Anecdotally, recently, a friend's daughter went to a local apartment complex, and the on-site there was, pretty direct in telling her, we have so many more applications than we have available space, so they can pretty much cherry pick their tenants, based on applications. And so it's going to be really difficult both on the rental side and on the sales side. So I will leave it there. Maybe we can chat about any questions any of you have. I'll leave the slides up in case you want me to go back to pull up anything.
Thank you, Ms. Elder, for again, it's a very humbling presentation.
Thank you. It's funny. Literally the day Apple made their announcement, my phone, some of my colleagues' phones started ringing off the hook with California and out-of-state buyers who wanted to get a handle on what's going on in this market. A friend of mine yesterday, back home in my hometown of Chicago, called and said, hey, there was something on CBS, which is one of our news stations, talking about the Durham market in Chicago. So, we're not a secret anymore. And there are a lot of eyes and a lot of money who want to have a stake in this area from out of state. And I can't press the point enough that it's really important that we find ways for folks who are here, who are looking for ownership opportunities, that we help to make that happen. It's really hard to compete, and that we also carve out opportunities to help folks who want to get into rentals, because that's going to be very difficult as well if it continues in the same path that it has been.
I will open up the floor for questions via either the chat or you can unmute yourself and I'll recognize you.
Hey, this is Jillian. Thank you so much for that presentation. I took some screenshots of those statistics. So just to clarify, with the renters market, so people that are wanting to buy a house are unable to afford a house or compete, and so they're becoming renters, and so that's putting pressure on their renting market. So people that would normally just be renters are unable to find rental property. Is that okay?
Yes. Absolutely. And some of the folks who are moving here from out of the area, sometimes when they move here, they want to rent for a little while before they buy. So we're seeing more competition from folks who are, transplants who want to be here in this area and get used to it. It's sort of coming from all directions.
Anybody else? Questions? Ashley?
Oh, sorry.
I saw Ashley's hand.
Yeah, I was just I'm just it's just overwhelming news, and I've kind of been following it as someone who's trying to buy a house myself in the near future. And I'm pretty engaged as far as paying attention to city council, and it seems like their response is always that they don't have much recourse to do rent control and those type of things to keep the prices from going up. So I mean, what are we able to do? Because it doesn't ever seem like we get to the meat of what we can do. We like to dish out, what we cannot do. And with people still waiting on money for over a year for HOPE funds and the rental assistance, it seems like this is going to encourage folks to push people out quicker, because now they have unlimited supply of people willing to buy and rent homes. So I guess I'm just curious, what recourse as citizens do we have?
That's one of the challenging questions. I just learned recently that rent control is overseen at the state level. It's nothing that local municipalities have control over. So that's a conversation that some are having now, potentially, I'm sure. Locally, I'm encouraging anyone who does find a rental to try to lock into a longer term lease and not necessarily do a 1-year lease. Try to lock yourself in longer, even if it has built-in increase. At least you know what that increase is going to be, and you don't have to worry about getting sideswiped at your renewal with several $100s in increase. Really just understanding what's out there. There are so many conversations that folks are having to try to figure this out, and unfortunately I don't have the answer, but that's a conversation that I'm happy to have with anyone. I think it sort of shook me when Wendell, my colleague, mentioned the older gentleman who was going to be displaced in that property, and realizing how few, if any, resources that we have for individuals at that income level. And so where do these people go? And that's a tough one.
Yeah, in the queue, I just want to put in the queue, it'll be Carl, then I saw Rachel, and then Alicia.
Hey,
Carl.
Tiffany. Yeah. I think I read an ABC 11 story that was really based off of those Triangle MLS April numbers, and it was pretty disheartening to see that year-over-year jump, and I think it's like a 2/3 drop in what's available on the market in Durham County. And I know a lot of the reporting has sort of said, these job announcements have a lot to do with it, and it sounds to me like you're saying that really is true.
Yeah.
I'd actually kind of wondered if that was reporters guessing, but it sounds like that really is almost 1-to-1 on some of that stuff. In my amateur legal opinion, rent control really isn't possible at the local level in North Carolina, unfortunately, and there's no hope for getting those laws changed in the General Assembly as it stands today. I wonder if, given the construction cost problem, because the other thing that I think a local government at the county or city level could do is try to do things to help increase supply, particularly of rental properties.
Yeah.
And it just seems to me like, Drew, who's not here tonight, his company is building an ADU in my backyard sometime in the near future. And between when we signed a contract in December and we got the final construction budget in May, the estimated cost of the price per square foot was up about 40%. And so I'm just sort of thinking, like, if the only other thing that local governments can do is help increase supply, it kind of seems like right now there's nothing we could do to help increase supply given how quickly the cost of construction is shooting up. And I wonder if it's as hopeless as it looks. But is there something that we could be doing right now to help increase particularly the rental stock?
I mean, supply would be amazing. One thing that I was excited about that went into effect the October BC before COVID is expanding housing choice, which allows for larger ADUs and smaller lot options and different configurations. And I was excited to see that, but then COVID sort of screeched everything to a halt. So we haven't seen as much activity as we were hoping to on that end. And now with pricing, for construction, being up, it's making it a little more difficult. But I think as more people become aware of that and understand how they can unlock additional value in their properties, and also how they can help with the housing shortage that we have, because essentially that's what it is. It's just true supply and demand. I sometimes hear people talk about, oh, we're in a bubble, and they're looking back to, 07 when things started to change. But I want everyone on this call to understand that back in 07, we had about 9 months of inventory on the market. It was a very different situation. All of the excitement in the market and everything I didn't even understand why it was happening because we had so much inventory sitting on the market. We are so far on the other end of the totem pole here that this is just true supply and demand. So anything that we can do to get more supply out there, whether it's sort of yelling from the rooftops and making sure everyone understands how they personally can leverage expanding housing choice to create some rental housing. Because I know a lot of folks, sometimes I mention it to people and they're not even aware of it. So I sort of go through a brief explanation. Anything that can help with sharing that and getting supply on the market can help. Also, even for ADUs and things like that, funding is a challenge. There's sometimes a gap in there, and maybe you saw that, in the situation with your project. So I don't know if there are funding sources that can sort of help to facilitate that, even if it's just short term during construction funding, so that the owner can do a refi out on the back end once everything is built. If there's way to pull together funds or an initiative to help with that. But really anything that can get supply on the market would be very much helpful.
Rachel?
Mr. Chair, I can also comment.
Go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. I would also share that, remember, one of our goals pre-COVID and for the city is to increase the supply. And that's the reason we presented our $160 million package over the next 6-7 years, as well as affordable housing bond referendum. Recognizing that's not going to solve it, but that's one of the goals, to increase the supply. I'll just give you a picture into the decision that I had to make this morning. So we received a letter last Friday, Thursday, Friday, from one of our nonprofit developers who's in the midst of a project creating affordable housing. And basically that letter said that, hey, Mr. Community Development Director, we're not able to complete that project because of the increase in costs, which basically increased over 40% due to construction costs. And so I'm waking up this morning, coming to work and having to make a decision on whether it's a go or no go. We're going to work our best to try to keep it going because I don't want to lose the units. And I'm not going to say what project it is right now because we're still, of course, in discussion. But this is reality. And this is the first project, well, maybe the second, that is facing these type of cost increases. And the question is, do we have the resources to keep them on track? And I can tell you that we won't have the resources to keep them all on track. But we're going to manage best we can. But this is the environment that we're working in. And I would just say it's tough. It's a challenge. But I just wanted to share that in real time to the challenge that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. And point of information for...
Sorry, I was just going to say, if I could ask a follow-up question before you turn over to Rachel when you're... Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah.
Well, Tiffany, I was just going to ask one other question, which is just, is there any hope that some of the low inventory in especially the single family home market is caused by a kind of like COVID holding pattern, that there'll be people who over the summer, especially when they're like out of the school year, will say, or past mandatory summer school this summer, for some people will say now is the time to move? Like, is there any hope that the market will actually get some, sort of normalization in single family home inventory this summer?
Yeah, I've seen correspondence that speaks to just that question. And so my answer is hopefully yes. This is what we call peak season in the real estate market right now. This is typically the busiest time of the year, leading up to like when the school year typically starts, because most families like to move and get settled in and have their kids in the school district they're going to be in. And then it sort of tapers off in a normal market at the end of the year. This past year, it didn't really taper too much at the end of the year just because we didn't have any supply. But yes, we are hoping that because things are getting a little bit better with COVID, that more people will be comfortable with putting their homes on the market. But there is a force that's working against that, is people know right now or are starting to understand how competitive the market is. And so some people, and I've spoken with some homeowners who said, well, I kind of like to sell my house, but I don't want to be on the buyer side in this market. So they know that they're the belle of the ball when they're selling their home, but they know that they're sort of, you know, the pimply faced, awkward teenager when they're trying to buy, definitely not on the desirable side of things, apparently. So, you know, and some sellers are like, well, I'll just stay in my house and make some updates and do some renovations and sit tight. So time will tell what that balance is going to be. But that's a great question.
All right, Rachel, I'm not even gonna hold you. Go ahead, Rachel.
Yeah, thanks. This is interesting. Thank you for sharing. I think when we talk too about the barriers on the supply side, the construction cost is kind of the obvious one, but a lot of people don't realize how expensive it is for the parking to also be built alongside these units. And so these parking minimums really, especially for a lot of the income restricted units, I mean, it's a make or break, right, in terms of making these deals kind of pencil out. And I think, Mr. Johnson, you've heard that from a lot of development partners kind of coming to the city who are trying to build more affordable multifamily. So I think just kind of thinking through this in terms of like, what can we do? I don't know of any parking utilization studies that have been done on the city side or on the development side in general, but I think encouraging city officials to reconsider these parking minimums and also just taking a closer look too at how many unused spaces there are. I mean, these spaces, it costs upwards of like $20,000 to build a single parking space, and you can't live in a parking space. So I think that's something too that a lot of folks aren't aware of in this discussion, and I think it's something that would be kind of a first stop to reconsider as we kind of look at this, because yeah, we're just not building enough, and so I think taking a harder look at what's kind of providing these barriers for the supply side. I think the parking goes hand in hand with the construction costs. So
thank you for that. Parking is a conversation that builders and developers have in this area quite a bit. And that's on, you know, the multifamily side and on the single family build side as well. Just sometimes trying to get, or a small multifamily 2 to 4 unit, you know, we call it getting your project to park, you know, being able to pencil it out so that you can get it parked. And sometimes projects don't get done because you can't park it because of our local criteria. And the thing that we're going to have to be aware of and stay ahead of is that a side note that leads into this, one of my mentors, Wendell Bullard, spoke with the Board of Equalization that shared some interesting factors, one of which is they suspect or they expect that within the next 10 years, Durham will be completely built out. And 10 years goes really fast. Apparently all of the large parcels, like 50 to 100 acres, are already gone. Some of the mid-sized parcels, a lot of them have been snapped up. It's really hard to find single family lots here. And so we're gonna start seeing more construction go up, but we can only have construction go up if you can park it. So we're gonna have to make a decision as a community, you know, are we going to build walkable transit-based communities, or are we still gonna require these archaic, you know, 2-car per unit rules that you see in some places for single family or small multi, and other parking restrictions that you see for larger multifamily? Like we need to make it easier to get housing on the ground. Otherwise, we're going to keep moving at a snail's pace.
Thank you, Rachel, for your question. Alicia?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Tiffany, for sharing this information. It was really enlightening. Of course, we've been hearing about it, but just seeing it is really, really believing, what's going on. But my questions are twofold. Do we anticipate, and I think one question is for you to see if you can look into a crystal ball, but the other question is for Mr. Johnson probably as well. But do we foresee revamping of city plans to look at the commercial retail space to minimize that? Is there any room for, I guess, revamping and pivoting on some of the development to provide more affordable housing? Because this has ramifications for colleges and universities. I mean, you have Duke, you have Central. I mean, everybody's going to feel this crunch, this housing crunch.
So the question is there room for?
Yes. Is there a process for revisiting city plans like growth, and do we adjust commercial retail space to provide additional housing?
And I'm guessing that might be more of a Reginald question.
Yeah, I'll take a look at that. So one of the things to keep in mind is that the city, one of the drivers in the creation of commercial space and residential space, whether it's rental or home ownership, is the marketplace. And so what you're talking about is converting, not converting, but how do we, use some of the retail space, which typically is downtown in the zoning. So really what you're asking is a zoning question. Right. And if you remember from the slides that, I think I've shared with the committee, there are two things that influence affordable housing creation more than the amount of money that we spend in creating it. One of those is jobs. That's the number one. The second one is zoning. And so what you're talking about is how can we change our zoning? And we did just change some model. When I say we, the city county planning department did just change some zoning to allow more density. Is it enough? Probably not. But that is something locally that we can do and be advocates for. And we have to be real about it, because just as there are some people for it, there will be some that are not in favor, because that makes things more dense. And you can see the impact of the most recent change, because if you look at through neighborhoods where they have an infill development, you begin to see houses in the front and houses in the back. Okay, that's new because of the zoning change. And what you're talking about, the market, all of the space downtown is basically driven, by the market. You have businesses and people coming, and I can, if I, can get a loan from a bank, I can build whatever I want to build, because I know I can get somebody to buy it, rent it at the price that I want, and the city can't stop that, unfortunately. What we can do some changes, but the reality is we are going to have to go up. And right now, if you look downtown, even whether it's residential that's going up, the retail has to be on the bottom. That's the ordinance. And so look at the new city parking garage, there's retail on the bottom. So we have to follow our own ordinance. That's not my area. We can talk about next year. When I say next year, next season, having the planning director come and talk about that. I'll be glad to consider that and work on that over the summer and have that ready when you return.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnson. And then my last question was around the affordable housing that we're building. So what you just experienced this morning, I mean, it just seems like that is going to domino, right, on all the development that we're doing. I mean, there's the cost increase, and I think there's going to be further delays because of, material shortages. So is there a work group? Is there an active, group looking at where we are and what adjustments need to be made globally?
Well, I would say that we are looking at it as not a work group. Of course, we'll be briefing you all. Right now, we're just trying to manage the projects that we've already committed to. These are not new projects, but projects that we've already committed to. And I know I use the term, bowling. It's like bowling pins. You hit one, knock them all down. But it is a challenge, and what we're trying to do right now at the departmental level is work to make sure we, as best we can, keep the projects we have on track. Now, remember, we're coming out of COVID. One of our challenges where we were trying to keep our nonprofits on track, because they were getting the rental incomes, and so now we, hitting with this. So it is challenge, but just know that we are going to do the best we can, and we may in fact have to delay, and that's a hard decision to make, but I'm prepared to make it on a project. Some we're gonna have to put holds on because the resources are not there for us to do the gap financing, which is what we do, or we may have to wait till the gap gets smaller. Now, one of the things that said, and I know this is a long answer, is that this price increases may be temporary, but temporary may be 2 years. And so, it may return, but we don't know. And it's going to be having a real impact on projects. And then the other piece that I would just mention was, on the parking, not to shift gears, but remember when we deal with affordable housing, it's 2 elements to parking. One, you talked about what the city requires, but then also what the financing requires. North Carolina Housing Finance Agency governs parking as well in the standards that they use also. So I know that's a longer answer. I apologize for that, Mr. Chair.
No, you're all right, Mr. Johnson. It's the last meeting. We let you slide.
Thank you.
Brian, Dr. Langloss.
Yeah, that actually is a great lead into the question I had. I was really thinking about, my understanding is a lot of the increase in construction costs is because of the interruptions to like mills shutting down and things like that, and disruptions in supply chains and things. And so I guess I was curious as things are getting back to normal, people are getting vaccinated, people are returning to work, things are starting to open back up. Are there kind of, projections or anticipated timelines of like when like supply is going to start catching up to this demand and kind of bring the new construction price down so that the inventory can start building back up again? Or
So I haven't seen any timelines on that per se, but we've sort of been waiting for that to happen for months now. There have been whispers among the building community of, oh, well, now these manufacturers know that we're willing to pay a higher price and we'll come up with the money to make the project work at that price. So they really don't have an incentive to drop the price, even though now they're running at full tilt. So we don't know when or if. I saw something several days ago that there is either a bill or there's effort at the federal level, really gone up the chain of command to ask for assistance on this as well, and to do some help with like tariffs for materials from Canada and things like that. So again, this is something that we expected to have already happened, and we haven't seen it. In fact, prices have continued to climb. And so, yes, hopefully that's something we'll see soon, but I don't know if we can hold our breath waiting for it.
yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't heard that there's kind of federal legislation being considered, because I know there's like federal law to prevent like price gouging and like shortage, the equivalent gas shortage to this. And so it'd be kind of interesting if they look at something to kind of prevent price gouging in like construction supply and stuff like that. Yeah, thank you for your time. This is really great.
Thank you.
Going back to Ashley.
Yeah, I guess I just had more of a comment than a question. I think it's going to come down to the city having to answer to its citizens whether or not housing is a basic human right. And if it is, then we're going to have to figure out a way to make sure people have a place to stay. And as with other social issues that are happening now, I think in regards to housing, people are going to start pushing back in more direct ways and not just being upset and facing eviction and going and trying to find something else. People are going to start staying and being forced out because, folks are getting tired of working and being told they can work and achieve these things and then constantly being pushed to the margins and being told they can't buy a house or rent a place while $600,000 condos are going up downtown. So the juxtaposition of those things, people are having a hard time reconciling, and there's just going to be a little bit more direct responses to that, and people are just going to make me leave. And at some point, you can't put but so many people in eviction court at one time, you know, and folks are just going to start pushing back and squatting and doing those types of things because it's getting out of hand. And it's just not right. And it's not any particular person's problem. It's systemic. And we all know that. But it's enough is enough. And people are getting upset.
I'm gonna double back on what Ashley's saying, and then I'll get Rachel, and then Brian. Did you have another follow-up question after that? Your hand was still up. I didn't know.
Oh no, sorry, I forgot to lower it. I'll do that real quick.
I think what Ashley says is correct. I myself was talking to my landlord the last couple of days because, of course, you know, my air wants to go out, and it's about to be about 9 million degrees outside, and she was just talking about, you know, how even landlords right now don't feel safe because I guess the responses that they're getting from tenants has been very volatile because landlords know come June 30th that the moratorium is ending. I think it's June 30th, if I'm not mistaken, within the state. And they're ready to start evicting folks. Now, obviously, there's a whole process within that. But the fact that my landlord was just like, listen, you know, I got people who owe like $14K. They haven't paid. They haven't done anything. They know they tried to work with them. It is going to be a wild, wild summer here in Durham County and within the city, unfortunately. And that's why, you know, Tiffany can attest to this, why I'm constantly talking to not just this committee, but to the Affordable Housing Committee about our lens has to be on, okay, yes, housing is important, but without the job, it doesn't matter. Without a good paying job that's going to be able to keep folks in good housing or affordable housing, it's not going to really make too much of a difference. Because I can see some things turning into permanent rentalship instead of renting and then hoping and then getting to a level where you can own. And what Ashley says is absolutely correct, in that folks are tired, they're frustrated, and this is where we're supposed to lean on government. But then again, but also our citizens need to realize that a lot in this state, the state runs everything and the city kind of just follows suit. And in order for that to change, the legislature has to change, give cities the opportunity to rule or make decisions over their counties as they see fit. But I just wanted to kind of make that comment. And then Rachel, you got a question?
No, that's perfect. It actually hits on what I was going to mention. I was going to ask either Carl, with your legal background, or if Mr. Johnson wanted to discuss kind of Dillon's rule and how that kind of plays into this tension between our local leaders here and their decision making versus what the state essentially is granted in terms of power over a lot of these development decisions that we're discussing. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Well, no, I'll just ask, and it's state in North Carolina. Basically, the way the state is structured, and we have 50 states, but in North Carolina, county governments are creatures of the state. They're created by the state. They're given power to the state. Municipalities can only operate in North Carolina on power that's given to us from the state. As a matter of fact, when we decide to do anything, the first thing that we have to check as a municipality is has the legislature explicitly given us that power? If they have not, then we can't do it. And that's the way it's structured. So that means that the state government and who was your state representatives and state senators and governor, et cetera, across the state of North Carolina does matter. It matters, and it matters greatly. And here's an example. But if the state is silent on it as relative to municipality, then most likely we can't do it. We can't go and occupy space unless they give us the affirmative, explicit authority, legal authority, to be able to fulfill whatever that responsibility is. So it's a challenge, and it's handcuffing. I don't disagree with anything that Miss Ashley has said. That's I can only work with the tools that we have. I can't try to be creative and create tools, but it's hard when the laws prevent you from doing that. I hope that responds, Ms. Rachel.
And I'll just add, because of course I'm not your lawyer and nor is this legal advice.
To fulfill what the responsibility is.
I'm sorry, I cut somebody off. I apologize.
No, that was me looking at the YouTube. Go ahead, Carl.
Oh yeah, but I was just going to say, just in terms of, and many of our members of City Council and many of our members of the Durham County Commissioners sort of sing this song every now and again. And I think some people think it's a cop-out. It really isn't. The General Assembly has been moving very much in the direction of more preemption of local control in the last few years. And I don't know if you guys know about this one, but they just are working on a bill right now to take away the ability of local governments to have tree protection ordinances bitten into their development. They were worried that us, liberals in Durham were going to require developers to not cut down trees when they built stuff. And so they have now, they're working on a bill to try to preempt that ability at the local level. I mean, they're at the point where they want to take away the ability of a city or county to say, really, even minor things about development, to be honest. Rent control, getting rid of the prohibition on rent control is one thing, but I think, Reginald's exactly right in terms of an understanding of North Carolina's government that, we have to be given the power to do something at the local level, but the General Assembly is moving in the exact opposite direction on a lot of stuff when it comes to development, especially development that's eyed towards building more affordable housing right now.
All right.
Now, the city, sorry.
Go ahead. Rachel.
Now, the city, though, too, all that being said, there are still some tools in the toolbox, so to speak, that the planning department is able to use, whether up or down zoning a property, as well as kind of putting into place some design standards. And I know people are talking a lot about form-based codes when it comes to walkability and stuff like that. So am I right to think that there are some tools, though, that we have at our disposal locally to still kind of determine how we grow and develop?
Yes, there are. And as I shared earlier, what we'll do when in August, at your August meeting, I'll work to ensure the planning director or her designee is here. You can talk about that more in detail.
Great, thanks so much.
I want to recognize those who are watching from home that are on YouTube right now. I don't know if this is the protocol, but as chair, I'm going to just kind of do personal privilege here and recognize those Durham citizens who have asked questions, and hopefully we can get them some answers. So the one question that C. Dixon has asked is, are there any incentives for citizens who may want to develop affordable housing on small lots, 1 acre or less? And I'm sure that's a Mr. Johnson question. And in the last question, I think it was deleted. But Mr. Johnson, do you think we have an answer to that? Are there any incentives right now for citizens who may want to develop affordable housing on smaller lots that are 1 acre or less?
I would say we have, we are going to issue an RFP for what we call neighborhood and under neighborhood stabilization. It's going to be for 5 units or less. So it's not necessarily lot size, but it's the number of units. And, remember, our role is to provide gap financing. We have not issued that RFP. with COVID, it's impacted a lot of things. But our goal is to issue an RFP for that. We don't have a program that for everyone who wants to participate. We don't have that in terms of our funding. But we do want to and will be funding smaller units. But it's going to be competitive.
Appreciate that answer. Tiffany, if you could check your messages on the Zoom. Are there any other questions that we have right now from Ms. Elder while we still have her on this important conversation? And Carl Drew is here. He's been here the whole time. He's been quiet today.
Yeah, I know Carl gave me a shout out and I didn't have a chance to chime in.
If you want to chime in, Drew, now go ahead. You can chime in.
I mean, I think everything that everybody's saying has been really great. And Tiffany, I really appreciate you jumping and giving this presentation. I really think I've been feeling and saying the same thing regarding like this compared to 08. Like there truly is a supply demand thing going on here. Like it does not feel like a bubble like it did back then, because there was these weird market things at play that nobody could really figure out. Like here, it's just everybody wants to come, everybody wants to buy, and there's not enough supply. But yeah, my firm's trying to find ways to be proactive, but like Carl said, like the construction cost is going up and there's not a whole lot you can do to it. One thing I did want to chime in on a bit ago when we were talking about like change in the supply chain. My supply chain manager recently told me that she was reviewing some reports, and generally the industry has a sense that while they definitely agree that the price isn't stopping anytime soon, they do at least see a evening out of being like an ability to access the supply for construction to become much more accessible by Q3. Like there's kind of this blip of because of factory shutdowns, all these different things, like it's hard to even get the material you need. So like when it comes to adding units, there's two variables, right? The cost to add it, but then the time it takes to add it. And I think right now we're experiencing both. And at least it sounds like there should be some amount of alleviation on the latter, the time, because you can actually get the material in a timely manner here by the end of the year, is at least what people are projecting. But I agree, if people are still willing to pay for the wood when it's at $60 a sheet for OSB, then they're still going to be paying for it, and we're not gonna see it come back down until people stop buying it. But yeah, I think it's been really great to listen in on this. I really appreciate everybody's perspective.
Absolutely. Just a couple more questions that were in the chat. I want to make sure that we touched on those. This could either be, I think, either Tiffany or Mr. Johnson question. Jillian asks, what are the statistics for Durham County? Are we seeing more urban sprawl, or their projections for how this will impact rural areas? And I think there was, okay. And then Ashley asks, if the city can't enforce rent control, can they incentivize rent control?
So on the, Mr. Chair, on the last question, I'm going to seek a legal opinion to give it a precise answer. I think, incentivizing rent control is something that cannot be done because it requires a subsidy, but I can get a more precise answer, but it's still rent control nonetheless. And so we'll work on that. The other question, and would you repeat the other question?
I can just ask it. I'm just
go.
curious. Like this is mostly to Tiffany. With MLS, the statistics looked at the city of Durham, and just curious if we're seeing more of an expansion into the county areas and how that might be impacting housing.
Yeah, and I have a similar slide that shows city and county numbers. They're actually very similar. What we've seen, especially over the last probably 2 to 3 years, is that the areas on the periphery of the main cities here in the Triangle are becoming more desirable, and it's sort of spreading. I know that conversation that Wendell had with, what was the office I just mentioned? said that the city would be full in 10 years. I can't remember the Board of Equalization, I think it was.
You mentioned Board of Equalization.
Thank you. He said during that conversation, they also mentioned that probably a majority of the new growth and will happen in the northern part of the city county area, because that's, you know, the part where it's not as dense right now. So we'll probably start seeing some growth going north. So I would say, you know, of course, when we see cities grow, it's generally at the core and then it fans out. We've started seeing the fan out, you know, outside of, even if you go to like Orange County, I was blown away at how demanding the Mebane market is now, Mebane and Hillsborough. So that's already started to happen. So yeah, we should see more of that here in Durham County as well. I hope that answered it for you.
Yeah, it did. I was just curious. Yeah, I've done a little bit of work with some Person County, the county right above us, their county commissioners. And I know they've just internally been talking about expecting Durham residents to expand towards them. And so I wasn't sure if that was like also a conversation that like realtors were having. So thank you.
Okay. Mr. Johnson, there's a question in the chat for you that Dr. Langlois put out there.
Yeah. Yes, be glad to answer that question. And the question is, would it be possible for the city to require developers to set aside like 10% of units for affordable housing or other similar requirements that wouldn't be rent control, but could help to increase the affordable housing? The answer to that question, unfortunately, is no, because the General Assembly does not give us the power to do that. We do have a fund, for example, that many developers could contribute to, that when they come before the council to seek approval, and the city cannot require them to contribute to that fund, but many do voluntarily contribute, which we greatly appreciate it. But if the state does not give us the authority to do that, going back to that question that we talked about earlier.
I want to recognize Ms. Washington.
Thank you. So I'm asking this question, one, for clarification, because I've sat in on a couple of the planning committee board meetings, as well as when they've gone to the city council to request permission, you know, or well, builders or contractors have come in to present their proposal for approval or denial to move forward with the project. So this may be more for Mr. Johnson. So is it not possible for the city to control the projects that are approved when they're not aligned with providing affordable housing? Because there's been a couple of times I've sat in on the meeting, and that seemed to have been the focus, like they were probing the contractors and the people who were representatives from the planning committee to ensure that, you know, the project was going to lend itself to be affordable. So is that not a space that it could be controlled at that point, that based on the proposal that's submitted, that it can be denied if it does not lend itself to be affordable housing project?
So the answer to that question is no. You use the right term, probing. And, you know, unfortunately, I'm trying to choose my words carefully for some reasons that I'll be glad to explain to you know, members offline. But no, there are certain times in certain places in certain types of projects that builders can build what they call by right, meaning based upon the type of project it is, where it's located, and that they can build and the city council can't stop them. There are some types of projects that you have to go before the council to gain approval, depending upon if you're changing the zoning and those sorts of things. But the council is, we have to be careful what legal ground we're standing on. I think I can say it like that. And so we kind of float on the edge, if you can read between the lines. I'm trying to watch for some obvious reasons, words carefully.
Yeah, we don't need you to get fired on your day off.
Right. So the answer to the question is the city council cannot require affordable housing in developments that come before the city council. That's the bottom line. What they're trying to do is to encourage developers to either make a contribution or service and target different groups. I will just tell you that, as I've shared with you, that there usually is a subsidy that's going to need to be required for it to be sustainable. People can offer, I'll give you discount rents for 3 years. But when we talk about affordable housing, I don't have a problem challenging. That's really not appealing to us in our mission. I need something longer than a commitment of 3 years, 2 years, 5 years for the money, if we're going to put any money in it.
I'm sorry.
No,
Go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
Go ahead.
So when I hear the mayor and I hear council members speaking of, we are committed to affordable housing, to ensure that Durham has affordable housing. When I hear that, I'm thinking that they're going to make sure that there's new affordable housing that's going to be put into place. So, and maybe this is not a question for you in this forum, maybe it is a question directly for the city council. Is it that when they say they're committed to contributing where they can to continue to support spaces that are already deemed as affordable housing?
What this, as you know, our council members are very well able to speak articulately, but I will say that they're committed to putting the resources to create affordable housing. Here's an example, is that when that revaluation has occurred, the dedicated housing fund remained at 2 cents in terms of the amount of financial resources, two pennies on the tax rate that's committed for that resources. That's really what they're saying. They're committed to policies and a prioritization of affordable housing. Since the bond referendum, any particular development that comes before the council, they'll encourage it, but they don't have the legal authority to require it. Does that help?
That helps a ton, because I think there's just been I think some miscommunication in some other spaces where citizens had thought or had given the impression that there was more control that could take place. And from what I'm hearing, and more as I'm understanding, that it's not so much that they have the control as they have maybe the resources to contribute to assist.
Yes.
Okay.
And I would say that is correct. As you know, I have a role and it's sort of on the ground, and I leave the elected officials to do their thing. But I've always been clear with the Citizens Advisory Committee on where we are and where we stand.
Sure. Right. Yes, I can agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Washington. We'll go with Ashley with the final question before we move on.
Yeah, so I don't expect anybody in any official capacity to respond to this at all, because I understand that you probably can't. But when we say that the city legally can't do things, does that not mean that the city technically can do these things, but there would be a legal response to them doing things? Right? Like, I technically can't I maybe technically can't build something in my backyard, but I really can build something in my backyard, and you have to come and get me for it. Pretty much is what I'm saying. If you can read between
apologize for it later.
Right. Like, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission type deal for a good cause.
So,
wink.
Let me make it so that Reginald doesn't have to answer this question.
Yeah, I didn't expect Reginald. That's why I prefaced it. I didn't expect anybody in any official capacity to even respond to it. But go ahead.
But let me just say, as a person who was not involved in the cases, if you haven't heard about them, there's a series of cases in North Carolina that are about cities, local municipalities charging impact fees to developers. And basically the long and short of it is the developers sued after they'd already made a bunch of money on the developments and said the city weren't legally allowed to charge them the impact fees that they charge them. And now the cities are having to refund a lot of that money. there is someone who will come around eventually and say, actually, your attempt to rent control, your attempt to develop in a way that was forced me to create affordable housing, like there just is. There kind of isn't a way to seek forgiveness later when people are going to realize that there's a lot of money that they could potentially win by saying the city wasn't allowed to require that in the first place. So let me just, hopefully that will excuse Reginald from trying to offer an answer on behalf of the city.
Yeah, Mr. Johnson, just be quiet. It's being recorded on YouTube. We don't want to do that. Hold on, Janice, before you go. I gotta quickly recognize Miss Washington. First of all, thank you, Miss Elder. We appreciate that. If you could, I know there's some folks in the committee that would like to contact you. If there's a way that you could put your info on the chat of how they can get in contact with you. And I will definitely try to make sure that the committee gets that slide, the PowerPoint, if it's possible, for them to be able to look at that themselves. But I'm going to skip real quick, Matt. And I need to recognize Ms. Washington because this is her, I know she has to jump to another meeting and this is her last meeting. So I just wanted to thank Ms. Washington for her years of dedication to this committee, her years of perfect notes for our meetings. I couldn't have a better kind of right hand in our executive board than Ms. Washington, who's always been a mentor and a great listener, and at the same time has never been afraid to fire off the real questions to folks who needed it, questioned. So I wanted to give Ms. Washington this opportunity before she jumps to have any words since it's her last meeting.
Well, thank you so very much, Mr. Chair. No, I just quickly just want to say I've enjoyed my time here. I have learned a lot. Yeah, I'm stunned a little bit because I'm just stunned by the presentation itself, even though I came in late. So my mind is in process mode right now still. But yes, I do want to thank everyone for giving me the opportunity to serve. I've enjoyed hearing everyone's voices, the passion that everyone has for the citizens of Durham. I think we all probably share that compassion and that component of who we are as individuals and wanting better for all individuals. And that has been helpful for me because it's easy to look out and see that there's a problem, there's a need. And then you don't see many people. Sometimes it's easy just to look at the problem and not see the people that really care about the problem, willing to do the work. But this committee has given me the opportunity to see that to hear voices of others who care, not just for themselves, but to care for the sake of others as a whole. And that's just been really helpful and encouraging for me. So again, I've been very, very grateful to have the opportunity to have served with some of you all for 2 terms and some of you all for 1 term. But yeah, just keep up the good work, and I plan to do so in a space that I can find to make this city better for all citizens, not just a few elite, but for all. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Washington. Truly, truly appreciate you. You will be missed.
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Johnson and Mr. Sears, for all of your work, your hard work you do. For the development department, and yeah, I wish everyone the best.
Thank you. I just wanted to just see that Council Member Freeline is here. We recognize you. I want to go ahead and go back to action item number 4 real quickly to the CARES Act second substantial amendment. Mr. Snars.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me reshare here. Okay, good evening, committee members. So I just wanted to provide you an update. We are in the process of a second substantial amendment for the Department of Housing and Urban Development CARES Act funding. And so I just wanted to briefly review the CARES Act funding allocation. So the high level allocation amounts, we have three sources. And so we have the, you can see my screen, Mr. Chair.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay.
Proceed, Mark, Matt.
Okay. So we have CDBG is Community Development Block Grant. And HUD made these, it's one grant, but they made the announcements and the allocations in stages. And so the first allocation for Community Development Block Grant was $1,202,601. And then in the fall, in September, the second allocation of $1,513,616 was made available or announced as made available to Durham for a total of $2,716,217. And then the second program is the ESG program. It's the Emergency Solutions Grant. And that is targets people who are experiencing homelessness. The first allocation was $602,383. And then a second amount of $2,060,285 was made in June for a total amount of $2,662,668. And then the third program is HOPWA, which is Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS or HIV. And there was only one allocation to Durham, and that amount was $70,340. So the overall allocation for the CARES Act for Durham was $5,449,225. So that's just a high-level overview. And what I wanted to do is then just review. We did, as part of, to receive this funding, we have to do what's called a substantial amendment to our annual action plan. And we did the first annual action plan amendment and it was approved on December 7th, 2020. And so that, for that amendment, we had three programs that we used the money for. Public Services Income Tax Preparation Assistance was $25,000. Housing counseling, we had planned to use $100,000 of that first amount of CDBG to do housing counseling. We actually are going to use that for a different purpose as part of this second amendment that we're working on right now. And then we also had emergency rental assistance in the amount of $1,077,601 for a total of $1,202,601 for CDBG from that first amendment. And then Emergency Solutions Grant for the first amendment, we used that for something called rapid rehousing, and that was $471,681. For emergency shelter assistance, $72,422. And then for administration, $58,280 for a total of $602,383. And then for HOPWA, we used that for short-term rental, mortgage, and utility assistance, $63,000. And then the balance of that was used for administration for a total of $70,340. So that was the First Amendment, once again, that we did from in the fall, and the council approved that on December 7th. What we're doing right now is the second substantial amendment, and it is in council's queue right now and is slated for a public hearing, which is on June 7th, 2021. And for this second amendment for CDBG, we are planning to use that CDBG funding for micro enterprise business development support, $810,000, which includes the $100,000 that we had originally planned to use for housing counseling. We are going to use that amount for the micro enterprise. And then educational support programs, which is a public service, $490,000. And then the administration of $313,616 for a total of $1,613,616. And then the Emergency Solutions Grant second amendment, we are planning to use it for emergency shelter, $787,191. Homeless street outreach for $110,000. Rapid rehousing, $462,000. Homeless prevention, $486,456. And the administration amount of $213,858 for a total of $2,060,285. So this is coming to you as part as the Citizens Advisory Committee. You serve as the body that is to review and support these recommendations for these amendments. And so this is just a brief overview of what the plan is, and wanted to make sure that you're aware of this public hearing that's scheduled for June 7th, 2021. At this time, I'll welcome any questions or comments about this.
Any questions? I think everybody's questioned out.
Yeah.
Get Matt off the hot seat.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
No problem. Thank you for Matt for that report in detail. We'll go to other business. I think is the next action item. Mr. Johnson, do you have any other business?
Muted. Mr. Chair, I would just say that again, we will not meet in June and July. The next meeting will be on August the 23rd. I would recommend to you that since this is the last meeting, that, well, I'll leave to you, remind you that we do need to have election of officers.
Yes.
And so I would, turn that over to you, but that's just a reminder.
Yeah, that other business of election of officers for members who will be returning. If you're interested in running in all of the three positions, that'd be chair, vice chair, and secretary. Those are the three members that serve in an executive board. If you're interested in, applying for those positions, we will do so at the August meeting, and then you will, whoever is elected will then chair the September meeting. That will be your first meeting as an as an executive body. I do want to recognize some members. I feel like I came in with like two out of the three that are no longer going to be serving on this board, but I wanted to give Andrew and Ashley an opportunity to give a few words on their behalf about their experience here on this board. I would just say on behalf of those who have been on this board in the past that you serve with, and those that you currently serve with, we truly appreciate your dedication to this cause, this important cause, and that you will be missed, and that you will always have a home here in the Citizens Advisory Committee. So I will start with Andrew and then Ashley.
Really appreciate it, Mr. Barnes. I really appreciate everybody on this committee, and I can't believe it's been 3 years. I feel like I just started, but it's really been a good time to just get to know the community development department more and see kind of a little more of the inner workings of what you guys do and all the hard work that you are working towards the betterment of Durham. And it's been an honor to have a chance to be involved in some of that and to help make decisions and see in the back end of a lot of the work that you're doing. Hopefully, this does not mean that I will not continue to interact with many of you on this board, as well as the people at the community development department, as Haven continues to try to help Durham in many ways that a lot of you guys are striving to do. So it's really been an honor to serve amongst all of you who have very similar passions and missions in life, and I'm sure our paths will continue to cross as Durham grows into this ever-changing market.
Thank you, Drew. Ashley?
Yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed working with you all for the past 2 years. I've definitely learned a lot and will continue to be engaged in a variety of ways and, take the information that I've learned here to kind of implement in some other areas. I'm sure I'm a rebel rouser, I guess, if you haven't noticed. So
Welcome to the crew.
I definitely intend to, take this information to people that, don't have the privilege or the access to this information. And because it makes a difference when you're trying to get things done, to have a little bit of information on it, how things work inside. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I'll definitely see you all.
Thank you, Ashley. Welcome to the Rebel Rouser crew. I started out as one, and I'm so glad that your last meeting, you brought that heat today, which was much needed. If there any announcements, I mean, I know we have a graduate. I just like promote her so much because I just love Jillian, but we do have a graduate. Any other announcements, Jillian?
Thanks, Levon. I was just gonna say, Ashley, I do just we're gonna miss you. Always appreciate your comments. I just, whenever we did meet in person back in the day, I just feel like you would always say, exactly what I was thinking or more than what I'm thinking. And I'm just always grateful that someone in the room was doing that. And, I'm sure that there will be people to continue to fill that spot and say those things, but just, I feel like you're, just gonna miss you, and grateful for your work and for your words of wisdom throughout these past couple of years.
Absolutely. I appreciate that, Joey.
Absolutely. Any other announcements?
I just want to thank Ashley and Drew. I know I've only been on the committee for a year, but it was nice to work with both of you. I also wanted to let my fellow members know I recently started a position with CASA, so I'll be on the development side. I kind of come from the affordable housing financing side, and now I'll be on the development side. I know most of you met Joanne back in March, so so I'm excited to kind of bring a new perspective, I guess, with that work.
And Rachel, we thoroughly enjoy you being on this board and look forward to that lens and perspective. Any other announcements before I say? Okay.
Yeah, I was just curious. This is Jillian. So the elections for the executive team positions are in August. Is anyone on the executive team not planning on rerunning for their seat? Just because I feel like we're always kind of in a position of trying to kind of coerce people into taking a leadership position. So, we should know now if y'all aren't planning on it, so people can start thinking about that over the next couple of months.
Well, Janice isn't coming back, so
well, we know we have one.
Oh, right,
for sure. If the board wants to keep me, I'm more than welcome, more than privileged to stay in the position. But at the same time, if we want new energy, I'm more than willing to pass it off. So, Dr. Langloss.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to keep being co-chair. I don't want to be chair. I feel like there's people with way more experience and knowledge in this area than me, but I'm happy to keep being co-chair and helping out. Either Levon or whoever ends up taking the position if someone else wants it and he decides not to take it. But yeah.
So yeah, I mean, listen, I'm humble, and those of you who know me, it's never about who. For me, it's never been about being in the position. I'm just honored that to just have been able to serve, just like everybody in here. And so I guess that will go into kind of my parting words for the group as we go into our summer recess. It has been an extreme honor over this last year, this difficult year, to serve with everybody on here. I think that our committee sometimes gets overlooked and yet we're the oldest committee out of all the committees on the city side. And if there's not a time where our committee is going to be at the forefront, it's going to be right now. And I know based on today, I knew that today's meeting was going to raise a lot of eyebrows, and it was going to conjure up that fight that we all have to make sure that citizens of this county and the city are served well, and that their voices will be heard, and that we will represent their voices. And we couldn't have ended better than what we had today. And I couldn't have been more proud as a chair than I have been today. And I just hope that same fire that we had going into this meeting carries over into the next year, because we're going to be looked upon. And I mean, I'm thinking that we're going to need to have the mayor attend the meeting, because I think that we have questions that need to be asked. And I think that since he's at the top, he needs to be able to answer those questions. And at the same time, our committee does coexist with other committees like the Homeless Advisory Committee. And I think that the more that each of the committees can work together, the better Durham is going to be. And so I've always wanted to make sure that our meetings have some type of meaning, and that we're efficient and productive, and that you came away better than what you initially came in here with. And I hope that this year during COVID that we have gotten better, you have learned and you have grown. And although we're losing some super people in the sense of they're not going to be here, or they're going to retire, or they're retiring, like, we always got to shout out Ms. Conyers, who, has just been a part of this team for so long. I know that those new members that will be coming in, I know that we're going to welcome them with open arms and have them jump right in, and they're going to feel our passion and our fire to make sure that affordable housing is something that is no longer a talking point, but an actual action point. And so I just wanted to just say that it's just been an honor to serve with each and every one of you. On that note, like Mr. Johnson stated, we're not going to have a meeting in June. We're not having a meeting in July. And our next meeting will be August the 23rd, 2021. And on that meeting, we will elect officers. And then those officers will then, whoever they may be, take over in the September meeting. So if nobody has any other questions, I will gladly take a motion for adjournment. And I will see you all in August if I don't see you on the street, now that we're going to be opening up a little bit more.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Seconded.
So moved, and everybody in the whole wide world, have a great next 2 months. Make sure you get vaccinated if you haven't vaccinated. Wear your mask still. And I'll see you guys in August. See everybody in August.
See y'all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Drew. Thank you, Ashley.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Thank you, Matt.
Right.
You did great.
All
We
right.
can call Miss Conyers up and tell her she can rest easy now.
All right.
All right.